I'm aware that the Rules has recently launched a campaign to reframe UBI in a way that would better enable it to lead to systems change. So, as of now, you don't see UBI as a path towards systems change?
No, by itself, it's not, because it doesn't challenge any of the fundamentals of capitalism. It doesn't challenge the growth imperative. It doesn't challenge the concept of private property. It doesn't redistribute power in any way. It adheres strictly to the principle of capital generation as the prime directive of the system. It doesn't question value at all. So for all those reasons, on its own, it's not inherently post-capitalist. It has the potential to move us towards post-capitalism. But in order to do that, it has to not operate in the welfare frame. It has to not be seen as a form of charity. It has to question concepts of power. It has to question work. It has to get into the fundamentals of the system. We have to somehow cohere around the idea that we're talking about system change. We're not talking about change to bits of the system. We're talking about system change. We have to be talking about system change. Are you promoting a logic that is genuinely transformational at the level of the system, or are you promoting a policy idea that will soften the existing system slightly? We think time has passed where you can do the latter. Now we've got to be focusing on the system.
So what are the problems that you see with putting UBI in a welfare frame, and what might be a better way to talk about it?
There are actually some really interesting parallels between the UBI as a concept and development, actually, as a concept, and poverty alleviation. When I was at Oxfam and we did a lot of work looking at the overall development narrative, how the world talks about global poverty and development, what we found was it's a conversation that's mired in the charity frame, which essentially says, the way to solve problems is to give a little bit of money from rich people to poor people. But we found that charity is a very, very small concept in many respects, because it is about purely transfers of wealth. It very rarely allows space for conversations around the systems. And that means that there's a very, very powerful tension between the idea of justice and the idea of charity. And that same tension exists in the UBI conversation, although what we'd say there is the tension is created by the predominance of the welfare frame, which is very much related to charity. It's how do you take care of the poorest people in society? How do they make sure they have just enough to survive? Just enough, because obviously where the Protestant work ethic kicks in at that point, and you say people must work for their living, and benefits charity can never be a preferable option to working.
So, but this is predominantly a framing challenge. This is not a challenge actually of the basic idea of providing everybody with the wherewithal to live a healthy life. Because that's what UBI is, really, the wherewithal to live a healthy life.
So we think the UBI should be a conversation about freedom, about liberation. It should not be a conversation about charity. And they're two very, very different things. So we know that tension exists right now. And as long as people talk about it in the welfare frame, you are going to reduce the idea to its most mechanical, lowest point almost. If you can get it talked about in the freedom frame, all the energy in the frame pushes it bigger and pushes it upwards. So that's the tension we have to figure out. And we don't know how to figure it out yet, because you're talking here about very deep logics that exist in our societies. These are very, very difficult things to get over. And so we have to engage at this level of the frames and the language if we want to really engage the root causes of the issues that we care about.